Well, for more on this, let's cross now to our correspondent who's live for us in India, Neha, Poonia. Thank you very much, Neha, for joining us. So, of course, the elections are underway. 1 billion people going to the polls. We know that India is a rapidly growing economy, but of course, the actual benefits of that growth don't always trickle down fairly. Tell us more.
That's right. I mean, this is, the scale is staggering. We're talking about 1 billion eligible voters who will cast their ballot over the course of the next 2 months. But in the first phase of polling, we've seen 166 million eligible voters across 21 Indian states come out to vote. Prime Minister Modi urging everyone to step out and cast their ballot, saying every voice counts. Mr. Modi says this election is a crucial one that could change India's destiny. His pitch to voters is that if he comes back to power, he will work to make India a developed country so that the impact and the benefits of India becoming the world's fastest growing major economy are felt by every Indian in the country. But of course, the opposition is alleging that Mr. Modi is making empty promises, that he's not really addressed issues like inflation, rising unemployment in the country, or the crackdown on dissent. And they say that Indians should vote to protect the country's identity as a democratic, secular nation.
And the issue of the exclusion of the minority of Muslims, and it's funny to hear the word minority when they account for some 200 million people. How are those people likely to vote?
Well, surveys show that Mr. Modi is popular among the minority communities. Experts agree that he's bucked all traditional norms of Indian politics, where after every 5 years, usually politicians lose favor among voters. But he's remained popular for the last 2 tenures. He's been in power for nearly a decade. And, surveys show that he could still come back to power because of that mass majority support he enjoys. But among some communities who belong to the minority religions, they're saying that they worry that the Indian government is turning into an authoritarian one. They're talking about declining space for freedoms like freedom of speech, freedom of practicing their religion openly. They're also raising an alarm about attacks on members of the minority community from right-wing, far-right groups. But Mr. Modi's party categorically denies that charge, and it distances itself from these groups, saying the government is committed to ensuring that India develops, and it develops equally for all citizens, irrespective of their faith.
Yeah. And lastly, Neha, the logistics of 1 billion people going to the polls, I mean, that's massive. And it's going to be taking place over a period of 5 to 7 weeks. Just give us a sense of how it's going to work and when the counting begins and so on.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the reason why we're not seeing polling happen in one day. It's spread out over 2 months across 7 phases. And the Election Commission, which is the body which conducts the polls in India, admits that the scale is staggering, which is why it's made arrangements, it says, to ensure that the elections are held freely and fairly. It's deploying about 15 million security personnel and polling staff to different corners of the country. It says, it's ensuring that even if there's a remote part of the country where there's a single eligible voter, that person will be given a chance to cast their ballot, which is why over the last few weeks we saw election officials carry these electronic voting machines using boats, helicopters, trains, even bullock carts in some instances. And, the Election Commission is describing this as a delicate dance of democracy. But, the scale is massive. We're talking about, 1 billion eligible voters. The first phase was the largest, with 21 regions seeing polling take place in some phase or the other. But the security officials that have been deployed on day one will now be moved to other regions next week when the second phase takes place, and we'll only have a winner declared in the first week of June. But of course, surveys are indicating that the results might be a foregone conclusion. But when you have such a massive voting exercise, critics say you can't count your chickens before they're hatched.
Indeed. Neha, thank you so much for your report there. Neha, Poonia reporting for us live in Delhi, India.